Arctic Sea is melting. That's really happening. Climate models are suggesting that by 2050 or so, we may experience an Arctic Sea in September, the month where we have the maximum melting. So in 2050 September, we can expect an Arctic Sea without any ice, sea ice. That is really, really is alarming. We know that climate change is happening. We need to take action, but nobody is really willing. And it'll tell you the whole global emission of carbon dioxide, for example, it's not some one country's responsibility. It's the whole world's responsibility. For example, carbon dioxide emitted by US will spread. It's a uniformly mixed gas, so it is similarly spreads to the whole world. So if you cut down, I will not cut down means that kind of statement will not work. Yeah, we all have to cut down. You can talk about many things, but the basic crux of the problem of climate change is if you want really contain, cut down the greenhouse gas emissions. There is no other magic. The concept of education is changing, but my point is that whole world is changing. So the concept of education also is changing. But in India, I'll tell you, still the conventional universities still stick to the old conventional teaching method. Still, many students, even in the AU student, when they come for admission, they are preferred to have a degree and get a job. But what we have to train them is as a global leader. When they come out, they should be able to take up any problem which the society is facing. The students should be trained to not to seek job but give job.
Thank you for joining Once Changing the World, India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. I'm your host, Eddie Avil, and today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Dr. Rajeevan Madhavan, who's a legendary climate scientist whose work has shaped the way we understand and respond to weather and climate in South Asia and beyond. He's currently the Vice Chancellor at the Atria University, Bangalore. Dr. Mahadevan brings more than 38 years of expertise from groundbreaking research at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research to pivotal roles at the India Meteorological Department, ISRO, and the Ministry of Earth Sciences. He is the co-author of South Asian Summer, Monsoon, Processes, Prediction and Societal Impacts, a fellow of all three major Indian science academies and the International Academy of Astronautics and a member of the World Meteorological Organization's Research Board. So, Doctor, really appreciate you taking time and your thoughts. I've had the privilege to host a couple of climate scientists. One of them was Professor Chetan Solanki, who's known as India's Solar Man. And at the last podcast that I had with him, he warned about the climate crisis in India, not just India, globally. And he said that we are at the verge of crossing this 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold, And if we keep on going with this pattern of consumption, consumption without conservation, we are bound to cross the threshold. And once we cross that threshold, there's no coming back. And that's going to lead to a catastrophic disaster for humanity. Then I also interviewed Gaia Harrington, who's the sustainability director at KPMG, and she had taken the 1972 report, which was created by MIT, and she revisited that in 2021. So she took the updated data of the pollution, environment, production, and so on and so forth. Just to get set context about this 1972 report, if you don't know about the report, that 1972 report said that by around 2040 odd, the humanity is going to go towards a catastrophical point in time because of a constant consumption without conservation. So she took the same report, fed in this the updated data. Her analysis was something called as business as usual, because that's what we're doing at this point in time. It's business as usual. We are not bothered about climate crisis. Both of these scenarios, it was very scary. So somebody who's been in the climate science for past 38 years, what did your thoughts on the current climate crisis? How serious is this, and what needs to be done?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really to start with the podcast. I think it's a really excellent question. It is a very important question. I fully agree that we are really facing a climate crisis today. I think many people are not really aware about it, and many people are even after knowing that they're not taking any particular action. So climate inaction is prevailing everywhere. And this 1.5 degree Celsius threshold, 2015 Paris agreement, we thought that we will hold on this 1.5 degree Celsius threshold. We will not cross that kind of warming beyond 1.5, but that is not going to happen. So already we are very close to 1.5. It may cross another 8, 10 years. If it is not possible, at least even by 6 years, we may cross 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. So we should worry about how to retain now restrict within 2 degrees. And there are replications between 1.5 and 2 degrees. There are a lot of replications. So the WMO has come out with a report a few years back, a couple of years back, saying that if you cannot contain within 1.5, the replication of having a 2 degree will be much more than what we can expect from 1.5 degree warming. So 1.5 degrees warming, the restriction is not going to happen. That I am very sure. So we will cross 1.5. We should all worry about that whether can we restrict to 2 degree in the next few years. So if we can do it, then we should be really happy. But damages will be really severe. He was talking about, you mentioned about the climate tipping points, points of no return. And there are two. There are scientists have identified a few climate tipping points. I think I remember about 8 or 9 where we have identified, and and out of that, I personally feel the West Antarctic ice sheet melting, potential collapse of the West Antarctic ice sheet, and that is more important, the most alarming climate tipping point, because it also mentioned it also says that irreversibility once triggered, the collapse could become unstoppable even if the global temperatures are later reduced. And also, it can the melting of a collapse of ice sheet, a large ice sheet, can really give rise to global sea level rise, completely up to 3 to 5 meters that we can expect. Another few climate tipping points we identified is, for example, Amazon rainforest going back, dying, then Greenland ice sheet melt, Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. Then Atlantic circulation, there is an Atlantic meridional overturning happens. The cold water sinks, then the warm water coming up. That kind of process is happening, and because of that process, it plays important role in regulating climate not only over Europe, the whole world. And so, if it is weakening or if it is slowing down, so it can have serious implications, including Indian monsoon, West African monsoon, and Amazon rainforest, etc. And another couple of things is, for example, Arctic sea ice melting. That's really happening. And climate models are suggesting that by 2050 or so, we may experience an Arctic sea in September. In September, that's the month where we have the maximum melting. So in 2050 September, we can expect an Arctic sea without any sea ice. That is really is alarming. So that kind of tipping points have been, for example, near Australia, the coral reefs near Australia. There's another important climate tipping points. So we identified the climate tipping points, and so if we can regulate our warming by regulating our burning of fossil fuels, etc., we can restrict with a 2 degree, and we can expect that this kind of climate tipping points really don't happen.
So, Doctor, I think what you've pointed out seems to be very, very scary. And I think maybe the human race is such is that it's very difficult for us to change because we are growing economically and we are understanding that there is so much that we can do to better our life, but maybe we don't have the understanding that in the race of maybe like trying to better of our life, maybe we are causing permanent damage to the earth, because I think we are all in this race of consuming more, because we want more than what we need, because our greed is bigger than what we need, and so we are constantly consuming without any conservation. So I'm not so very sure whether we will ever go to a sustainable world, because to go towards that, maybe humanity needs to understand and maybe restrict our consumption But if you see the advertising industry is constantly bombarding, okay, consume this, buy new TV, buy new car, buy new sofa, buy new clothes, and there's like a huge dump of garbage, discarded clothes, and this is just growing. So I'm not so very sure a human race as such is going to stop with the consumption. And if we don't stop with the consumption, I don't see us, going towards a sustainable world. And then even right now, I mean, you mentioned about those tipping points, those dangerous tipping points, and you gave a very scary scenario of maybe by September 2040, the Atlantic Ocean that it will be left without ice, and if that happens, that means sea levels are going to rise. I used to live in Bombay all my life. Now I've kind of moved to Goa for the last 3 years, because I believe that cities in itself are not sustainable, because there's a constant influx or inflow of migrants uh, looking for opportunities. The population is growing, but there's no land. And I mean, we all going vertically up, and there's too much of consumption, there's too much of pollution, too much of cars, and still we are okay with it, because I mean, that that's the point place, like a city where you've got everything. You've got your hospital, you've got your education, your entertainment, and great life. But then we don't realize that, oh wow, this lifestyle and this race and this pollution is actually killing us, and I think maybe we need to maybe look into that, and you pointed about those climate tipping points, AMOC, you mentioned about the doomsday glacier, you mentioned about the Amazon's rainforest, and even I think recently United Nations had declared a code red for humanity. But you rightfully mentioned, there's no action. We seem to be like not bothered about it. Now, India has like a net zero goal of 2070. How practical is something like that? Because I completely understand India and the others, I mean, countries like Bangladesh or Indonesia, these are growing economies, and because of which, obviously, they need their factories and things like that. But then I think India, Pakistan, we have the largest number of deaths when it comes to pollution. Uh, how do we manage this balance of sorts, where we keep on, maybe obviously meet our economical targets by maybe having these factories which are producing so much pollution, but yet maybe somehow find a way to control it? How do we do that? What is the long term implication of this, where people are dying but we're not looking at it? And what do you think the government can do for this maybe 2070 goal of net zero?
Yeah, yes, yeah, that's true. India has made a commitment of net zero emission by 2070, and many other countries have committed by 2050. See, we are taking another 20 years of delay in doing that commitment. And I know it is a very big task, which the government has agreed to do it. Net zero emission is not just reducing emission, but also capturing carbon from the atmosphere and other. For example, whatever we are emitting also should be taken back, and also should be stored properly. So we need a lot of technology development for doing that. Simply cutting down the emissions may not really help to achieve the net zero emission. It's a very tricky kind of commitment which we have made. But there is no other way. We have to make commitment. We are doing it, so we should be happy with that. But the problem is, as you rightly told, India is a growing country. So still, we don't. I still am very sure that India is a developing country, even though we are fourth in economy, GDP, etc. But still, GDP per capita is very small. We are still there's a lot of people who are below poverty line. There's a lot of inequality in our society. There are people who are really rich. There are people who are really poor. So we need to have a development. So once you want to development, there's nobody can stop you to do the development. But the only thing is, when you do development, be careful. You should not harm the environment. You should not harm our own climate system. So it's called so-called sustainable development is really an important goal which we need to do. There are 17 sustainable development goals we have been identified by United Nations. We are following it up. If you really see the Niti Aayog report of Indian government, we will see that we are lacking the implementation of such SDG goals. We are very poor in implementing. There are obvious reasons. And so the air pollution is one of very important examples where we can mention about we need development, but also we are facing with the problems like air pollution. Air pollution is a very serious problem. It's throughout the year. Air pollution is people talk only during winter, especially because it's happening in capital. Now, once something happens in the capital, it becomes a big issue, a big talk. But it happens everywhere in the part of the country. It's happening. And air pollution in winter, it's happening not only in Delhi, it's all throughout the so-called Indo-Gangetic plains, right? Starting from Pakistan. And the basic reasons is basically our industry, transport system, and constructions are some of the reasons. Meteorologically, during October to February or so, that season, climatologically, the whole region is susceptible for air pollution because the atmosphere become very stable. So whatever you are emitting, it will get trapped. It's a pollution will get trapped within the lower layer of the atmosphere. So air pollution can be seen properly. So because visibility will go down, you will see the gray and dark atmosphere. You can feel the punch of the air pollution by smoke, etc. You can really feel. I was there in Delhi about 8, 10 years. You can literally feel, experience the air pollution. What it is. And so my question is, can we stop industries? Can we stop moving and the cars and transport? So theoretically, it is possible. For example, I was told Beijing in 15, 20 years back, air pollution was a very serious issue. They controlled it. They controlled it. Of course, China can do it because they don't bother about implementing things. People will really do it. But here we talk about democracy. Then we have to take all people along. Poor people, good people, bad people. All people have to take care. So we cannot simply shut down one industry which has started a few years back. There are lots of small industries which is around the Delhi city, for example, Faridabad, Gorakhpur, etc. So that also, so air pollution in Delhi is not caused by only the local problem. It's also can be transported from outside. So we need to have a balance. That is true. But as far as air pollution in Delhi is concerned, or North India is concerned, we are not able to get a breakthrough. For example, some days in November, when this October, November, when these farmers in Punjab, Haryana burn the residue of agriculture residues, we blame them. But then there is no choice for them to do it, isn't it? So they have to go for the next round of crops, wheat crops during winter. We only told them that you do with rice in Punjab, where water is scarce. The government told that you encourage farmers to do cultivation of rice. So they started and they're earning a lot of money. So it's a big profit for them. But then they have to quickly go for the wheat. So then they don't have sufficient time. So simply they burn. So it's a social problem. So we have to have check and balance between these two. We need development on one side, but we have a lot of social problems we have to have. As far as India is concerned, see, it can be done easily by countries like China, North Korea, because they don't follow any rules. But we cannot do that. So we should have a kind of balance between these two. But I'm not saying that I'm not saying that we are going to have face dooms days in coming years. But then to implement such kind of a neat atmosphere without any air pollution, it's a big task. So we need commitment not only by the government but also by the people. And when I was in Delhi, I remember when central government says something, Punjab government will say no, it's wrong. We are not doing anything. So there's a lot of conflict between state and center. So such kind of political problems also are there. So, but I fully agree. We need development, but it should be sustainable development. And we are facing serious issues of net zero emission by 2070. It's a big task.
Right. Yeah. I think China, obviously, I mean, has been able to reverse, climate crisis in parts because of maybe, like you rightfully pointed out, they can actually do things, force things, which India cannot, because of our democracy. And yes, I think we are in this catch-22 situation where we need development, and we need agriculture and the crop fires and so on and so forth. But maybe we don't have the right answers. But I hope that maybe we find this answer, because there is a huge number of young children and grown-ups who are losing their life because of this pollution, this growing pollution. Because I was going through the data and saw that the largest numbers of cities, the most polluted cities in the world, happens to be in India. I really hope that we change. Maybe we change to maybe clean energy. We maybe try leveraging technology to maybe reverse climate crisis. I know these comes with a cost, like a carbon capture and things like that. But I hope that maybe we find ways where we are able to create a sustainable future, a circular economy of sorts, and maybe that needs to start from the word go of maybe creating something, a business. Because I guess when we create something, we try to solve a problem, and in the effort of trying to solve a problem, we end up creating another problem. So there is, so maybe we need to holistically look at everything sustainably and start doing things and find ways how we can fit in the circular economy, so where we start doing something without creating any problem or pollution. Now there was a lot of hope from United Nations, with the COP events, the climate change conference event. But now it seems it's at least people are criticizing it as it seems to be an annual talk shop. Where people come and talk with little concrete action, where each nation is blaming the other nation without like proper concrete steps. What are your thoughts?
That's a very interesting question, but frankly speaking, the UN, so-called the UN climate, I fully agree. The UN climate talks, for example, annual conference of the parties, so-called COP meetings. I will not say it is completely a meaningless meeting, but it's a mix of both action as well as inaction. Though many critics argue that balance between leans heavily towards inaction, especially in the recent years. And I remember I never attended the COP meetings, even though there were a lot of invitations, and I never attended because but I know many people who attended and they give the feedback to me, and they say that's all meaningless meetings. They talk how to write a statement, and they are worried about whether you should write there or instead of here. That kind of small words they worry. But at the crux of the problem is you stop fossil fuel emission, reduce the fossil fuel emission. Nobody is willing to write that statement. And I was told that only a couple of years back, the first time they used the word fossil fuel in the COP statement after 20 or 25 years of rigorous every year meetings. We spend a lot of money, we inviting. One side we talk about sustainability, then at the same time we call some 10,000 people for the COP meeting by giving flight tickets, everything. They come and eat and talk about a small statement which simply remains on the paper. I'm not very, don't feel that I'm a critic of COP meetings. It's all should happen. But my question, a point is that it's not happening. That's my point. For example, Paris Agreement we made in 2015, and we also made loss and damages funds agreement, but nothing is enforcement is not really happening. It's all vague goals because there is no commitment, there is no penalty. So if you don't do it, there's no penalty in that. It's all voluntary kind of agreement we are making, voluntary, involuntary nature. For example, Paris Agreement, USA has withdrawn from Paris Agreement after Trump came as president. So, well, so what? So US is one of the biggest polluter in terms of greenhouse gases. Trump assumes that greenhouse gas is not a serious problem. Similarly, emission cuts, we have so-called nationally determined commitments we have, so-called NDCs we have. India has also made a lot of commitment. We are going to more into renewable transitions we are trying to make. India is really doing extremely well in going to renewable energy, and we should be proud of that. So, but then emissions still rising. Emissions are still rising. Then somebody talk about finance. We need finance and climate action, adaptation, for example. So people say that the global warming is happening, extreme weathers are happening. So you adapt to the changing world. But then you need technology to adapt, isn't it? So you can simply go and do the adaptation. Adaptation needs a lot of technology development, and for example, developing early warning systems, etc. So, but developing nations are still underfunded, so they don't know what to do. And the most of the impacts really happen with the developing nations, not the developed worlds. That's another in this. There's a problem with justice. It's all recognized in principle, but real compensation equity lacking is there in climate talks. So we know that climate change is happening. We need to take action, but nobody is really willing. And it'll tell you the whole global emission of carbon dioxide, for example, it's not some one country's responsibility. It's the whole world's responsibility. For example, carbon dioxide emitted by US will spread. It's a uniformly mixed gas. So it is similarly spreads to the whole world. Okay, the whole globe it spreads. So if you cut down, I will not cut down means that kind of statement will not work again. We all have to cut down the global emission, the emission of carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, etc. There's no other way. You can talk about many things, but the basic crux of the problem of climate change is if you want really contain, cut down the greenhouse gas emissions. There is no other magic for this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So simple words. I mean, unless until we don't take responsibility, the nations, and we collectively don't have accountability, S10, and we don't cut down our emissions, nothing is going to change. So, Doctor, I think we living in very, very scary time. The reason I say this is because it's not so much of fear mongering, but we truly are living in a transformational as well as scary time. Transformational because the world is completely changing. We have a tech which is self-learning as sorts, and eventually this can completely transform mankind, or also maybe disrupt mankind, because we are building something called as AI, which is going to become artificial general intelligence, which is going to be self-learning. We understand that that tech itself is going out of hands to the point where it could lead to an existential crisis. Yet we are chasing and racing it because we understand that the ones who build it will get an undue advantage over there. So there's always, because the reason is that we stuck in this capitalistic world, where it's an hierarchical world, and everything is power, and everybody wants power, and that's the reason they are running towards building AGI, even knowing very clearly that nobody understands the underpinning of these neural networks. It's still a black box, because what it does, nobody can kind of understand, but yes, still we are building it. So that's an existential crisis. Second existential crisis is a climate crisis. We are continuously consuming without conservation, and we don't even understand that or ACs or refrigerators or cars or consumptions is actually killing the earth, and we are like, in even it's not just individuals, it's nations. We are playing these blame games, and the president of America itself doesn't believe in climate crisis. So how funny is that? So that's climate crisis. Yeah, yeah. So we live in a very oblivious world. Third is this biotechnology. We are in the cusp of gene editing of sorts, where we can create these bio warfare, bio weapons. We can tinker around and create these viruses. I think maybe COVID was an example. We don't really know whether it was through the gain of function research, whether it was like a man-made virus which was let loose out of the lab, or it actually happened. So, but we staring at these multiple existential crises, but I don't see any uh you know collaboration of sorts, where nations coming together and saying that, oh, we are uh, taking a step ahead, and maybe as human race we are becoming more economically independent and growing. You mentioned about GDP, but India's per capita GDP is still down. Why don't we go to well-being? What's with this race of chasing GDP, which doesn't make any sense? Do you think as a human race we can actually go towards sustainability and well-being? That's my first question. And second question is, you're part of the ministry. What are any international collaboration which have been most rewarding or impactful in your climate for the take up? Great if you could talk about that also.
Yeah, actually, we are really racing without any meaning, frankly speaking. So, because we say that no, the France has gone ahead, so we also should chase them, and but without knowing that our people within our own country is really suffering, and because of hundreds of issues, not only the the, the pure atmosphere, the clean air, but clean water, then one day meal for them. There are many families in the country are suffering and they cannot afford to have one meal per day. Forget about three meals, one meal per day. So we have multiple problems. So, but at the same time, people may say that if they're doing it, why we cannot do it? So we should do it. There's no meaning. There's no question about it. We should do it. But we should not. We should also worry about the people within the system, within our country, how we are. But well-being is very important than chasing somebody's wealth. You have to be contented within our own requirement, with our own requirement. If we are able to meet our requirement, there is more than enough. You should not worry about how China has gone far ahead from us. 20 years back, I remember there's a lot of discussion. We are comparing with India with China, but where is China now? And so that does not mean that we should really chase China to beat them. At the same time, of course, we need development. As in the beginning, I told that we need the development, that we also should worry about well-being of our own people. So that is more important. And as far as Ministry of Earth Sciences is concerned, we have, it's a scientific ministry. So we need a lot of scientific collaboration with many other countries. And Earth Science Ministry means we are more into services, Earth Science services, Earth System site services, like weather warnings, cyclone warnings, for example, climate forecast, and seismology, means earthquake monitoring. There are many things, ocean, for example, ocean energy development. So we have plenty of such as successful collaboration. I can, I should really mention the collaboration between India and the US. That was the most successful collaboration we ever had. And still is going on. We have collaboration with many countries like US, UK, Japan, Australia, France, for example. Many countries are, especially Norway, for example. There are many countries in which we have collaboration, but the US collaboration is highly, highly productive. We have been doing it for the last 15, 20 years. And when during my time also, it really got strengthened. We extended the collaboration. I remember we signed the MOU again to her collaboration. So they helped us to develop the climate models, the weather prediction models. Their data are given freely to us. We together, India and US together, put the whole so-called Rama data piece over the Indian Ocean. It's called Argo Flow. So we put, and they are giving a lot of information, a lot of new information about the ocean circulation. When cyclone comes, this data are very useful to know how the cyclone is moving, how the cyclone is intensifying, etc. So beautiful collaboration, very, very productive. They, so-called National Atmospheric and Oceanic Administration, NOAA, is the organization. It's equivalent to Ministry of Earth Science in India. So we have collaboration with them. We also have collaboration with NASA, but they are really productive, really productive. So, and I'm just saying about the US collaboration because the content and the scope of the collaboration is much, much larger than the collaboration with other countries. So we've really benefited with these collaborations. And as far as Earth system science is concerned, we need collaboration. Without collaborating each other, we won't improve anything. We won't do anything. We cannot do really anything. The atmosphere, for example, doesn't understand the difference between India and Pakistan or India and Bangladesh. It's a one atmosphere, isn't it? So we need to really collaborate. So beautiful collaborations are happening. So that's a good thing will happen. Only thing I am really worried, I'm not really coming back to US government, is US government is cutting down the funding to NOAA. There are, this happened a few couple of months back. I remember many of our known colleagues in NOAA have been fired or they took this retirement, etc. They moved out. It's really alarming. Many people ask me a question, how it will affect our Ministry of Earth Sciences. I said it will really affect. If this funding crunch is happening and continuing, NOAA will not be able to help us. Now, for example, the Rama buoys which were kept over the US are maintained by them. So they have to come once in a year, see the instrument. Because instruments are developed by them. We are only helping them and putting there and taking the observations and sharing them, sharing the data with them. But day-to-day maintenance or yearly maintenance we need to do, and if an instrument is going out of order, they have to come and replace it. So that will not happen if the funding is not there. So and these database are very, very useful data. So we have serious problem if NOAA is not really funded. So, but I cannot go and ask Trump government saying that you please fund your NOAA so that we can benefit, isn't it? It is their own benefit. They should really help NOAA to get funds, and they are doing wonderful work. They are one of the best weather climate services in the world. If you are not giving enough money to them, well, you can understand the meaning of the whole science.
I really hope that this stance of US changes, and I hope that there is support, because I think what happens at one part of the world, like you mentioned, affects every part. And I think we need more collaboration in tackling this climate crisis, together. Now technology, there's a lot of hope on technology, because artificial intelligence, is playing a huge role in forecasting models, and early warning systems. Can you help us elaborate on specifically the role of technology in climate crisis and these climate disasters?
Well, so technology will definitely will help us in disaster management, climate crisis. So there are many ways in technology can really help us. And for example, understanding the monitoring the whole climate system, you need a lot of satellites, you need a lot of Doppler radars, you need a lot of sensors, very critical sensors, and IoT will be required for doing the monitoring. And now the AI is coming as a big tool for weather predictions. So, for example, Google has come out with a AI model called GraphCast. Uh, that people say that is really good. So, I also gone through the papers on GraphCast, and it shows that at least 8 to 10 days, it can really do as good as physical model, which we normally use mathematical model, which we normally we use. The difference between physical model and graph cost models, AI based models or AI based models, take very less computing power time when compared to a physical model, mathematical model. So in the scale of orders, it's maybe 10 times, 20 times much faster AI models are. So AI models is really helping us. Only thing is we need to really understand how the AI models are. The beginning of our discussion, you told neural network is a black box. I really agree. I as a forecaster, monsoon forecaster, we need to first my forecast goes out. We need to know why it happened, isn't it? We need to understand so that next time we can correct that mistake error and we make sure that that forecast goes wrong, doesn't go wrong. But AI model doesn't give you any inputs. It's a black box for us. It doesn't understand the physics of it. It understands numbers. Okay. So, but these are very powerful tool. I'm not saying that I'm not discouraging it. Frankly speaking, I'm helping our own university students and professors to develop AI based models for other prediction. So AI is really changing the whole world. And for risk assessment, we need GIS technology, big data analytics, we need communications, we need a faster communication. You make a forecast, you make a warning, but if it doesn't reach the user at the right time, then there's no meaning because the user cannot really act on it. So the communication protocols are very important. So NDMA I heard that recently. Of course, when I was secretary, there was a lot of discussion, but it did not happen. But I was told that it happened recently. It's a common alert protocol. It's a CAP. So that they have implemented. So and then social media and applications, so apps and all. Then for virtual reality or augmented reality are useful for training and simulation purpose. So in general, the technology is very important for climate mitigation, climate adaptation, early warning systems, etc. So there's no doubt about it. And see, country like India can really afford. I'm not saying that we cannot do that. We are doing it and we can still afford. But it look like there are many countries which they cannot really afford. I remember when I was secretary, there was an organization called Tribes in Bangkok. So there's the organization we used to give a lot of funding to that organization, which they help the poor countries which they cannot afford, like Southeast Asia as well as African countries. I used to go for their annual meetings and all. I see that many countries don't have a basic infrastructure for weather forecasts. Basic infrastructure. Forget about modern radars and satellites, etc. Basic infrastructure they don't have. And they are the countries who really face such kind of large impacts when a natural disaster happens. But they are not well equipped. Nobody is helping them. So we try to help them. So we are doing a lot of help to them. So there's a lot of inequality in terms of the capability of each country to face the climate crisis. So that's why when we go for a climate discussion, we say that you please give us money so that we can give to the poor countries, so they can use that funds so to adapt the climate change issues. But nobody is giving money.
Right. I hope there is more support, because globally, right now, I think for the past few years, we're seeing more and more erratic weather patterns. There's, Dubai was snowing, and there's so many, catastrophic events when it comes to, monsoon rains and so on, so forth. Now, you spoke about technology, you spoke about Google's model. There is also Microsoft's model called Aurora, which is an open source model, foundation model for climate. Then there is Nvidia's Earth 2, which is basically a physics based model. It's a simulation. They're creating a digital twin of sorts of the complete Earth. So I'm sure, I think, these companies and nations are realizing that, I think, these specifically these climate models, they need to be grounded in physics. And that's when, I think, maybe, the analysis would be, more accurate. uh, will be great if you could talk about your book, the one which you co-authored, South Asian Some Monsoon Processes, Prediction and Societal Impacts. And what are the key takeaways that, you hope that the readers can take from the book?
Yeah, monsoon, as we know, is a bread and butter for South Asian countries, especially for India. Without monsoon, we would not have been surviving here. Okay, so we have, luckily, thanks to God, we have natural systems and natural process. We are having two monsoon. One is southwest monsoon during June to September, and northeast monsoon during October to December. We are lucky to have these two monsoons. So then, to understand, then monsoon is a very complex process. It's a very highly complex and dynamic natural system. So if you really ask me a question, have you understood the monsoon completely? The answer is no. We are not understood monsoon really, completely. There are a lot of unknowns still even now. We are making a lot of research, doing a lot of research for last 50, 60, 70 years, or almost 100 years. We are investing a lot of money in terms of observational systems, computing power, improving computing resources, etc., to understand more about monsoon. But we need to understand, as you told, that because of climate change, there are a lot of problems, so there are a lot of issues related to monsoon variability. It's become a little more erratic now. So it is not a typical book, book bookish type of monsoon is not really happening. What we know from the books, there are a lot of abnormalities happening every year. So we need to understand that. And we did not have a good book. The last book which we had was a book called Southwest Monsoon by Y.P. Rao. He was the DG of Director General of IMD in 1976. After which, there was no a formal book where a student can really read and understand. If for example, research PhD student want to come and do research on monsoon, he should know what monsoon is, isn't it? Then only he can do, and what are the gray areas, what are the issues, etc. So I thought I will write a book. I started from 2006. It got into my mind, but it happened only 2022, 23. And I was chasing the ambition, but then after my retirement, I got the help from two my junior colleagues, the young colleagues. And so we wrote the book together. So the book basically is a compilation of the latest what we know about Indian monsoon, South Asian monsoon. I must have read at least 600 to 700 research papers which are published after 1976. And at least some papers, at least abstract and conclusion. But some papers I gone through the papers. It's a really tough job. It took 2 years for me to complete this book. But it is updated, very much updated books with a lot of references. So then what I understood, when I wrote what I understood is monsoon had changed. What we know about monsoon in 1976 is not the monsoon we know now. That's the biggest takeaway point. And monsoon, the characteristics of monsoon will change, the way the monsoon understanding of the basic definition of monsoon itself is changed. We know earlier the monsoon was because of the land sea contrast, and so monsoon, the wind flow will reverse between winter and summer. That concept is no more valid. So new observations say that beginning of the theory of the basic monsoon is wrong. So a lot of improvements in understanding, a lot of changes in understanding. So the basic the takeaway point was the monsoon we know now. In 1970s were not the monsoon we know now, and not that. That is another point is that the monsoon in 20 years down the line will not be the monsoon what we have experienced now. Monsoon is changing very fast. Erratic becoming more and more erratic, more and more frequent heavy precipitation. The whole characteristics of monsoon rain is changing. And so that we are brought out. So it is. I feel that this book cannot be a static a kind of a reference book. So the book is, it says the monsoon today, as on today. So maybe after 10 years, I may have to revise it and say that monsoon has again changed. So this is the monsoon as of today. So, but it was a really a good experience. I learned a lot. And even though I worked for 30 years, more than 30 years in monsoon, when I started writing the book, I found myself that I don't know many things. Even if you ask me a question, how much do you know? I will tell I know very little about monsoon.
That's so very humble of you to say something like that. So you spent 38 years in the space. Yes, I think monsoon is extremely. I mean, we it's very very erratic at this point of time, and it's caused some of the biggest catastrophic problems here in India. Specifically, I mean the ones which I remember, it's really still there in my mind is Bombay's 2005 deluge, then Kerala 2018 rains, the Uttarakhand floods, and so on and so forth. So I think yes, I think growingly these weather patterns is becoming more and more erratic, and maybe we need to maybe see if there's a correlation between what we are doing, the climate crisis, and see what can be done about it. I mean, maybe if we can kind of reduce consumption and your emission. I was going through one of your podcasts, where you mentioned that, for ISRO, you kind of, predicted accurately that, it might not rain for the take up. Is there any weather prediction for India that you think, you believe will surprise people in the coming years, which you would like to share with the audience?
See, over the years, the monsoon forecasts are improving. There's no doubt about it. Monsoon prediction. I remember I joined in 85, 86. So when I joined that, the weather prediction capability was very poor, utterly poor. So we could not predict more than 2 days. What we don't know, because we did not have mathematical models at that time. But our prediction has improved substantially. There's no doubt about it. So, but still, if you weather prediction is not a 100% success forecast. So we cannot develop a 100% successful model, isn't it? So after all, we are predicting what the weather is, what the nature is going to behave, how the nature is going to behave. There are a lot of uncertainties, even though our understanding is improved. And so such can the ISRO, my experience with ISRO, predicting local weather at a very almost 2 days before or 1 day before, such kind of requirements may come in future. Many times it may come in future. Ultimately, we need to help the policymakers to understand uh, how the weather system is going to experience in future, and how the extreme weather with the climate change, what we are going to experience is the extreme precipitation, for example, flash floods, for example, flash droughts, for example. These are some of the issues which people need to know. Question: if you ask me a question, are we really equipped with giving such kind of forecast for extreme weather events? The answer is no. We are still not very equipped. Still, our forecast for extreme weather is not really happening very successfully. We could not predict, for example, Bombay extreme weather event, 2005 floods. We could not predict. 2015 floods, to some extent, we could predict. Chennai floods. We could predict. Kerala floods, we could predict. I'm not saying that 100% is successful, but we could give a warning. But such kind of, even 2008, 13 Uttarakhand floods, we could not do anything. We did not know what is happening. Frankly speaking, forget about prediction. We did not know what really went bad on that day, 2013. Some people say it's a glacier melt. Some say it was a glow, the lake overflowing. We don't know but it was heavy precipitation. It's not out. We could not do. In future, next 15, 20 years, this frequency will go up. So we should be really equipped to have such kind of weather forecasting skill, warning skill in coming years. So we need to develop better and better technology in terms of model improvement, whether AI can really help us to do. If you really talk about GraphCast, I was told that GraphCast is good if we are talking just a mean rainfall forecast between physical model and this the GraphCast model. But physical models are even now is better than GraphCast model in predicting extremes. Because the number crunching is good for normal distribution. The extreme, the two ends of the tail of the normal distribution, the model doesn't really pick up. So that's a basic problem. So In future, still, extreme weather, IMD will be able to predict. That's my point. If it is, for example, 2005 Bombay floods, I am very sure Bombay IMD may really predict such kind of events in the coming futures. If it is so, we should be very, very happy with our science.
Right. I really hope that we get into that future where there's some kind of prediction and we can send out warnings. You spoke about the communication protocols, so that, people know about these kind of disasters and we can avoid these disasters, because these disasters, obviously, it's not just the loss of lives, it's a loss of, business and, so on and so forth. Now, Doctor, you have kind of, transitioned from climate to education. You're the Vice Chancellor at Atria University. The education industry itself is completely changing. There was this traditional learning, and then now the traditional learning itself is completely being impacted by with online learning. And COVID was one of that, like a global experiment of sorts, which said that, which kind of showed that learning can happen outside the confinement of a classroom also. And then we have these things called MOOCs, these massive open online courses, where these open courses which are available free of cost, where some of the top scientists, researchers, physicists, chemists are giving education almost free of cost. So somehow when I can kind of have these podcasts, I keep on mentioning that, I think the only thing which kind of stops somebody from learning, sitting, you could be sitting in any part of the world, you could be sitting in a rural place, or you could be sitting in an urban place. If you have like a phone and connection of internet, you actually have the global teacher, the education, because the internet is like the global teacher. And then there is right now in comes chat gpt, these artificial intelligence, large language models. There is obviously, there's a lot of cons of something like that, because we don't really know where would that go. But there are a lot of pros, because it's kind of democratized education, because there are these things like, I mean, these large language models, these large reasoning models, these generative AI models. At least these generative AI models, for example, if you're a designer, if you had to create like a basic design, you had to like do like a proper course, like a couple of year course. Right now you just put in a prompt and you get a design, you get a 3D model, you get a video, you're a game, and so on and so forth. So in a scenario like this, I mean, it would be great if you could kind of give us like the current education system, and how do you see merging with the future of education? What do you think is the future of education going to look like with these kind of impact and disruption?
I think it's a very, very important and a very interesting question which you asked. And frankly speaking, the education, the concept of education is fast changing. And the education what we had when I was there in my school and college is not the education which we have the present day generation students are learning having. So the experience is much more different. And you talked also the accessibility or flexibility of anyone to learn. So so-called democratizing the education is very important. So I fully agree with that. That we need to have such kind of protocols or tools for democratizing access and flexibility in education. And it should not necessarily that you go to college and study and learn new things. And so access to quality education from anywhere, especially for students in rural and underserved areas. And for example, flexible learning paths for different age groups and working professionals. For example, somebody may be working in IT firm, but he wants to learn. There should be a profession. He will not be able to go to a college or university and study the things. And it also remote learning, for example, facilitates global classrooms and peer learning across geographies, etc. And when the pandemics happens, for example, COVID really happens, we supported continuity of education during disruptions like pandemics, conflicts, climate disaster can happen. So we need to encourage democratizing access and flexibility in education. That's really happening. You talked about online platforms like Coursera. India has a platform called Swayam. This is all have brought a lot of high quality courses to millions. I understand Coursera still charges. You have to pay money to Coursera courses, but I understand Swayam and all don't charge. So, but then this kind of facilities are available and it's growing. The need for such kind of remote learning is growing up. Your question on how the education in coming years is it's going to change. Not the education that we had in 20, 30 years back. will not be education. The so-called concept of education and the scope of the education in the coming years. And in my opinion, it's not a typical classroom lectures we have now in the Atria University, where I am the Vice Chancellor. We don't teach students more into kind of a typical classroom lectures. So classroom blackboard lectures are very minimum. Out of 100%, only 20% of subjects or topics or material is covered in terms of teaching on the blackboard. But 80% we ask them to do projects. It's called experiential learning, and where the students are given a problem related to the topic and ask him to do a project. So by doing the project, we teach them theory. So this is the theory based for this practical. This is the result which you will get, and this is the implication for this. Otherwise, if you really teach a theory on the blackboard, student doesn't know what to apply. And when really something after his education, when he takes up a job, when a problem is given to him, he doesn't know which theory is to be applied, isn't it? So there's no connection between theory what he learning and the practical which he does. So practical means I mean to say that the real world problems. So the student in the present and the future will be the students who can really adopt and do the societal problem. So they should be trained in such a way that the student is capable of taking up any social problems of down the line. For example, after the 4 years of education, if he comes out, the student comes out and he is taking up a social problem to solve, he should not say that I have not learned this lesson. So he should be well equipped to take up any issues down the line. And he should be not only the subject which he has learned. So now people are talking about interdisciplinary education. He may be good in physics, but he also may be knowing the what physics can do with biology, or maths can do with biology, or chemistry can do with physics. So this kind of multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary education is much more important. And more, frankly speaking, we are shifting from a concept called getting a degree in education, college degree, MSc degree, to skills. We want to develop the students have skills for doing a particular job to do it. A degree certificate will not help a student to do a job. He has to have a skill to do the job. So we are moving from the so-called shift from degrees to skills. So in terms of then we do micro credentials, model learning, this kind of things, and for 3 to 4 years of education. We also teach a lot of AI fluency, AI, whatever you may say. AI is going to stay with us for many years come down the line. And without AI, knowledge in AI, what AI can do, what AI cannot do, also should be taught to the students. We have a digital transformation course, 4 year course here, that we teach a lot of AI, but we simply don't tell AI students that AI is everything in our life. We don't say that. We say AI is helpful. It's a tool, but not a substitute for a teacher. Okay, so not a substitute for a book for some. AI is a tool. But it should be told, it should be taught. It's a very, very useful, productive tool. So AI should be taught. So we have a good course on AI. AI is going to stay with us for next at least 30, 40 years. So we need to train our students on AI. Then sustainable literacy we need to have. Then more of emotional intelligence we need to impart on students. Emotional intelligence, not just an intelligence. So and also differentiate between bad and good and bad. So that kind of feeling to students who should. And as I told, AI will be a teacher, tutor, and also it can be used for evaluating a student. And as we discuss a lot about climate change and the burning planet, so we need to impart curricula should mainstream about climate literacy. I think very few people talk about climate literacy in the education now. We don't talk. We probably in geography in high schools and all, they may talk about climate change. But once you grow up, we don't teach them about sustainability, climate literacy, etc. So this year at the AU, we are starting a new course, BS 4 year course called Sustainable Entrepreneurship. Okay, we need entrepreneurs, but then they should be able to do work projects on sustainability. We need a lot of technology development for. We are very sure that sustainable development is going to happen. It's needed. So then we need technology, people with the technological knowledge to do develop technology for sustainability. So sustainable entrepreneurship comes a very major important aspect which we need. So we are starting a 4-year course on sustainable education, sustainable entrepreneurship. And as we do that, learning should be there anywhere, anytime, but with integrity. So these are some of the so it's a we so the learning will not be confined to a university or class small classroom. It will be a global classroom. Sitting in India, we should be able to study what the MIT is teaching, what Harvard is teaching. So that kind of a scenario will really definitely going to happen. And US student may, if they want to know about Indian monsoon, sitting in US, he should be able to learn about Indian climate, Indian political system, etc. So the classrooms are becoming global. That is what.
How cool is that, Doctor? I mean, I'm so very glad that I mean, you putting this climate literacy in the curriculum and sustainability entrepreneurship. I think that's so very important. I think when we start it from the core, the foundation, I think then we'll be able to create a sustainable future, a circular economy. Now that the pros are loaded of AI, but then there's also the cons of AI. The cons of AI is that it's unlike a human brain, with our 18 billion neurons and 100 trillion synapses. We have a specific capacity of memory and computational, the performance. Now AI is not like that. AI, you keep on adding GPUs, CPUs, and you add more electricity, more training data, and it keeps on growing. And what's happening, the output of that is that these AI models are now leading to something called as AI automation, which is leading to job loss. Now, in a world where we are going, we are increasing the capabilities of AI, and it's able to do more and more things that a human can do, which is obviously leading to a job loss. As a university, how are you preparing for the future? Because I mean, how do you thinking about the placements of the students of the future? What skills or degrees do you think are going to be relevant in the future?
Well, so we have four because in our university, Atria University, we have the theme. The theme of the university is sustainability of the world. We talk anything, but only of sustainability. So we have four different courses. We don't teach many courses. We teach only four courses. One is on digital transformation, nothing but it's computer science, IoT, robotics, etc. But more of into AML. So we teach a lot of AML. And second thing is on life sciences, which you also mentioned about after the COVID, we also got the we also realized the importance of how life science can do uh, better things to our life. So life science is the second course. The third course is energy sciences. So energy demand in the coming years will be huge, and we are all moving into renewable energy, solar, wind, and now it's a green hydrogen also has come into picture. So we need to develop technology, and also we need to train our students to work on this kind of fields, renewable energy. So this is the third course is on renewable energy. Fourth is the e-mobility. And so as we know that we are also moving into EV vehicles, electronic vehicles, with batteries and all this. So it's all sustainable picks. And for fifth course we are studying is sustainable entrepreneurship. So it's all related to sustainability. So these are all wonderful courses which ultimately the student will learn and understand. And once it comes out, he'll be able to take up any problem, any social problem to solve. So we are teaching in the way such that the student is trained by thinking. So we calculate, we give a kind of inspiration to the student to be curious, asking questions. It's not simply one way process that you tell something to student and he absorbs it. It's not like that. The students also should think critically. So the thinking is different and critical thinking is different. So we need to teach the students to do a critical thinking. What is good? Ask question why, how, why it is not so, like that kind of question. So it's a kind of a mutual process between a teacher and student. So it's a very interactive sessions we do have. And we also teach the students that AI is a tool, not a substitute. As in the beginning, also a few minutes back, also I told you, artificial intelligence is a tool, not a substitute. So there's a statement we normally make: let AI do what it does best, and but so humans can focus on what they can do best. It's okay. So let AI do their job, but humans also should do their job. So humans should not leave their things to get it done by AI. We should not leave it to AI. The basic problem with the AI is there are a lot of issues with ethics, how to, where to use it, where not to use it. We assume, we normally in many colleges, university, we teach the students that AI is the thing, world we are going to face in the coming years. That may be true, but as a tool, not as a living system, isn't it? It doesn't have so-called empathy. You cannot understand the feelings of the people. So you need to inspire. So you cannot simply substitute a human by a AI system. AI is, after all, it's a simple computer codes written by humans, nothing else. We need to understand the constraints and limitations of AI tools. That we should understand. Of course, AI can do wonderful things which human cannot do. As you rightly said, that it can crunch numbers very fast, much faster than what we do. And repetitive job, for example, making a system, for example, a small electronic component, which humans do with hand, the AI system can do much faster. It's all good, but there are limitations in the AI system. So that we teach the students very correctly, saying that don't assume that AI can really replace the human. It's not going to happen. It can only help humans. If you assume that it can only help human, then it's okay. So what we teach the students here is, you ask a question, are we using AI to make education more human, more curious, compassionate, and creative? If the answer is yes, we are on the right.
Right. How awesome. Doctor, my last question to you. Will be great if you could leave us behind by painting a picture of India in the next 10 years. The climate crisis, maybe what worries about you about climate crisis, and what part of it you're secure about, that climate crisis is safe in the hand of IMD, and with the role of technology, and maybe the future of education.
As far as climate crisis is concerned, I am really worried. I'm really worried, and we are going to face a lot of climate extremes in the coming years. So we need to. So we should not doubt about it. It's going to happen. It will come. Such kind of Bombay rain, heavy rains, and Kerala floods will going to happen everywhere. Not only in Kerala, everywhere. So we should be fully prepared. So we need to improve our early warning systems. We need to improve our communication protocols. We need to have a much better disaster warning system. And many state governments have improved their disaster warning system. So disaster management system. For example, Odisha is a good example, best example. After the 1999 cyclone, they learned the lesson. So that what do you have to do when a cyclone comes. So they are doing extremely well now. So similarly, Gujarat governments, many Tamil Nadu government, Kerala also has learned a lot. So they are also improving it. But a lot of scope is there for the improvement a lot in the coming years. So things are improving, but some state governments are least bothered. One belief they have, this so-called administrators, they have the belief, let it come, we will give them some compensation, the so-called disaster management compensation. Money is there in the treasury. You can take some money, give it to the people, they will be happy. But my point is that if science and technology we have, good science and technology we have, why we cannot use them to save people? Okay, when a landslide happened, when people die, now, we can always go, and after a few days, you take them to the hospital, people who are survived. And after a few days, Chief Minister or Prime Minister can go there and give them some money to them, saying that you keep this money, they'll be happy. So that's not the way of disaster management, isn't it? So for a family, the son, for mother, it could be a son. So for a wife, it could be a husband. For parents, it could be a small child. So it's all life. It's all. We cannot value this kind of relationship with money. So government should really spend a lot of money in terms of saving people. Saving people should be the motto. Even if we can save one life, please save. So our disaster management system should be so crisp and good, so that it is very effective, and so that even a one life, if we can save, we should be able to save. My very optimistic view is that it's going to happen. For example, now heat wave is a good example. 10 years back, when heat wave comes, nobody knows what is happening. People will simply die. 2005 or 15, I think I am 15 in Andhra Pradesh. Many people died. simply heat waves. Then we are realizing, oh, there is a concept called heat wave. Then now, but we have a very, very foolproof early warning system for heat wave, a kind of heat wave management system by the state government. So people don't die with heat waves now. Very few, except maybe 2 or 3. So that's an example, good example. It can happen with cyclone. Cyclones now, 99 cyclone, we have 10,000 people died in Odisha, but now when cyclone come, people don't die, isn't it? So this is going to happen in future. So even though the climate crisis is going to deepen in future, but I am very optimistic that our early warning system, disaster management systems are improving so fast. So, and government also investing a lot of money. So we need to be happy that we are going to really face the climate crisis very well. But there could be a lot of surprises that we should always keep in mind. All the extreme weather events we will not be able to predict, so we should be able to cope up with some kind of unavoidable circumstances in which people die. So we are not able to help them in early warnings, etc. So we should be mentally prepared. But otherwise, our early warning system is improving substantially. And as far as education is concerned, as I told that education, the concept of education is changing. But my point is that whole world is changing. So the concept of education also is changing. But in India, I tell you, still the conventional universities still stick to the old conventional teaching method. They don't allow. So it's only still many students, even in the AU student, when they come for admission, they are preferred to have a degree and get a job. That's all. But our motto should be, our aim should be not to just to give degrees to us. Degree, of course, they have to get a degree. It's a paper. But what we have to train them is as a global leader. When they come out, they should be able to take up any problem which the society is facing. And he should be a kind of a multitasking person. He can do any job. And also the most important aspect which we are doing is that the students should be trained to not to seek job, but give job. In the sense that they should be able to make startup, entrepreneurs. They should be entrepreneurs in the coming years. So not just to go to a government department or go to an industry say that please give me job, I have this degree. If they can do it, is good. But if they cannot do, they should be able to sustain themselves of getting entrepreneurship initiative, start making startups, etc. So that's the way our education should be. AU is on the job, so we are on the right track. We are having teething problems, but we are on the right path. So I'm very proud of my university.
Thank you, Doctor, for taking time and being part of the podcast. I mean, some of those climate warnings seems to be scary, but I think whatever you painted a very, very fair picture of the world, truth rather than fiction. And I think, yes, maybe I think we all need to take responsibility, and not just leave on the governments. I think, as everyone, like individuals, we need to start making the change, because the change comes from us. If we make the change, the rest will follow. As far as the education system, I think, Doctor, I think you are shaping the future of the education. You rightfully pointed out. I think what you're doing is so cool. These climate literacy and having sustainable entrepreneurs. I think that would be the key of building future of students who are like not just like you said, not just looking for jobs but creating jobs, and these sustainable entrepreneurs, I'm sure, will create a better world and a safer world and a safer India. So thank you very much for taking time and being part of the podcast. And my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. And until next time, see you guys. Bye. Thank you, Doctor. Really appreciate this. Yeah?